I had told the story of the watch to other people, family members, other veterans, many times over the years, the 50 years. Got this call. Does the name Lori McLaughlin mean anything? And I said, of course. I said, the watch.
In most instances, a watch will never be more than the sum of its parts. Its wheels, glass, and steel. But every now and then, a watch manages to transcend the material and become something that captures a reality of the human spirit. That brings us to the story of Barry Jones and his Tudor Submariner. This tough little Tudor reconnected two men who were lucky to make it out of Vietnam alive.
When I was growing up and coming of age in the early 60s, a draft still existed. All the men of my cohort or generation expected that we would be serving in the military. One thing led to another, and ended up in the Marine Corps in 1964, before the Vietnam War.
The draft was on, and I chose to join. My dad said, you should join the Navy because you get 3 squares and a clean cot every day. And out of boot camp, I became a hospital corpsman. Then I went to Camp Pendleton, went straight to the 27th Marines there, and we were attached to a ground unit there at 27th Marines. And whatever they did, we did.
At the center of this story are 2 soldiers and a really great watch. And while this Tudor sub would eventually become something special and unique, it started as most did at the time, as a tool.
I was assigned to the Navy Underwater Swimmer School in late 1967, and I needed a good diving watch, and I knew about Rolexes, and I didn't have a good diving watch at the time, and went searching for one and found a Tudor at a jewelry store in Key West, Florida. I think it was in the neighborhood of $150,
right,
which was about a third of my monthly salary
okay.
at the time.
Throughout 1968, the scene in this part of Vietnam was, as you can imagine, complicated. The North Vietnamese army was pushing hard into southern Vietnam, and jungle warfare meant constant patrols and protection of strategic fire bases. Being deployed in this environment meant being dropped into long days in a harsh climate under the veil of constant unknown threat.
Oh, I remember landing in Da Nang in this temporary airport with just metal runways, and being hot, and it was spooky, you know.
Lori was one of my 2 corpsmen. I ended up as a platoon leader, infantry platoon leader. There would have, at the time, there were probably about 40 Marines. The air base, which was a huge American supply point and entry point in Da Nang, was always threatened, so security of that air base was one of our kind of missions. But our unit was often out in what we referred to as the boonies, and that's where the so-called triple canopy jungle started to unfold. So on about the 22nd or 23rd of August, we immediately launched into an operation moving towards Da Nang, where a battle was unfolding between a North Vietnamese sapper unit that had infiltrated the air base that I referred to earlier. They were on a strategic bridge south of Da Nang called the Cam Le Bridge. The North Vietnamese Sapper Battalion was outstanding in terms of their military skills and their discipline and just their basic toughness. And they knew that it was kind of a battle to the death because they were trapped by the time we got involved. In the middle of the battle, I saw a North Vietnamese machine gun position that was bearing down with fire, automatic fire, on our advancing line. I unholstered my .45 and got a couple hand grenades handy and started moving on that machine gun. And I got real close and I fell down, or at least I thought I fell down. And that's when I was I'd been shot. I didn't realize that I'd been shot. I tried to get up 2 or 3 times. So I'm laying there on the ground losing blood, and I looked up. There were overhanging trees throughout this village, and there was a North Vietnamese soldier on a tree branch, and he had an AK-47 automatic rifle, and he was still firing from his perch in that tree. And he must have assumed, in some sense of the word, that I was finished.
We were moving through the village, taking fire, small arms fire, grenades, and he got shot once in the leg, side, and then the wrist.
What you can see, the watch was hit by the bullet that went through my arm. I had it on my left wrist. It was hit right on the lug and bent the lug. The pin popped out, and so when Laurie was working on my wrist, the watch was kind of just hanging like so on my wrist.
I'm not sure if he thought he was leaving the battlefield at that time. And I removed the watch from us, and I asked him what he wanted me to do with the watch. He said, "Keep it, Doc."
First Lieutenant Jones and Corporal McLaughlin left the battlefield beaten up, but certainly not defeated. Both men returned home and established lives after the war, and 50 years goes by. Despite all the time since that day in Da Nang, a piece of their connection remained. And you had the watch, it was at home in a drawer?
I had the watch, and I had it with some memory items I had in a small box. I kept it there with some other things, pictures and trinkets I had from Vietnam. When the 50-year anniversary came of us leaving for Vietnam, it came to me that I needed to reconnect with my brothers. And so I searched for several of them, and I found Barry. I always referred to him as Lieutenant Jones. And I found out that he had been a fishing guide. I'm not real certain how I found that out. My daughter helped me. And I was looking through all the fishing guides in the Pacific Northwest, and I found one that Carl Jones was the proprietor. But I thought I'd give it a shot, so I gave a call to the guide service, got a recording, and left a recording on there that I had served in Vietnam in 1968 with a Barry Jones. And if he knew of him, could he please give me a call?
When Carl called, he said, "Got this call. Does the name Laurie McLaughlin mean anything?" And I said, "Of course." I said, "The watch." Carl remembered the story. He'd heard the story.
The amazing thing is, when I sent him the watch, he received the watch 50 years to the date that I had taken it off his wrist. And I did not plan that.
In November of last fall, I visited Loveland, Colorado, where Laurie and his family have been for years. I think your whole family was over.
Well, yeah, we got together with the whole family. They wanted to meet Lieutenant.
And they all knew about the watch. The watch has taken on a much larger meaning than just a watch. It's a symbol to me. It's a symbol of my connection to Laurie and to our fellow Marines.